Okay, it has been 6 long days since we last hung out here on Pat's Interference, and I said we need to bring the people up. I'm sure most people are over the Jets loss, but we're bringing in the people's favorite guest, Doug Kyed of the Boston Herald, my teammate. And I pitched this to you yesterday, meaning Monday, as like maybe we'll do a problems draft. And I said, you know what, like that's a little too negative for a town in a week that has just been steeped and soaked, and this sucks and everything that goes with that. So we're going to turn that around. We are going to have a Patriots fixes draft today, things they can do right away, immediately, before they go to San Francisco this weekend. We'll get to mailbag questions. We'll give the people some answers, some therapy, and we'll get out of here. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, and if you don't get enough, Doug, why don't you tease Pat's Chat? Because that's back, baby.
Yeah. Subscribe to the Pat's Chat podcast. Me and Michael Hurley of WZLX do a podcast twice a week, just chatting about the Pats. Kind of self-explanatory there. But you can find it on Spotify, like Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Nothing crazy there.
And immediately post-game. So if you need, your therapy quicker than 6 days after the worst loss of the season, like we have here today, you can get it on Twitter and all YouTube and all those different places. Their numbers have been great. They're great. Hurley's never been on this podcast, but you can get him on the radio Monday through Friday.
Yeah, so you can't have Hurley. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. The Patriots are 1-2. They're going to play San Francisco this week. I'm going to dive more into the 49ers later this week in a traditional preview episode for people who are just masochists. I also have Pat's Jets film notes at the end of this in a separate segment, along with a couple of travel stories. But in the meantime, you and I have been hired as consultants. They say, okay, we need to bring you in, fix what's going on offense, fix what's going on in defense. What's some of the low-hanging fruit? The first thing you would say, do more or less of this, and the Patriots are just a better football team starting on Sunday.
I mean, for me, it would just be fix the left tackle position. I know that's easier said than done, but City Sow back in practice this week. If he's playing left guard, I think that could potentially help the left tackle position as well. But I also think it also could just be providing more help on the left side. But whether it's Caden Wallace or Vidarian Lowe this week or DeMontre Jacobs, that position just needs to be so much better and much more fortified. And the one thing that really surprised me this week was, Jacoby Brissett is holding the ball a little bit too long. He fixed that a little bit in week 3, but after week 2 is hovering around like 3.25 seconds per drop back. I think it's still over 3 seconds. So I was thinking like, this is a Jacoby Brissett problem, or like at least partially a Jacoby Brissett problem that the Patriots are allowing so much pressure. And then when I was looking at PFF, that's not the case. Jacoby Brissett is only responsible for about 8% of pressure that the Patriots are allowing right now, which is actually pretty low as far as NFL standards go. Most of that pressure, or the position with the most responsibility for pressure right now, is at left tackle. And that's not a major surprise since they've gone from Jacoby Okorafor to Vidarian Lowe to Caden Wallace to DeMontre Jacobs. But that's the one position that you have to look at on this team and say, like, that has to be significantly much better one way or another moving forward. If we're looking a little bit further down the line, I would personally be a proponent of bringing in someone like Donovan Smith or Charles Leno. There's some other names out there that are less likely, the David Bakhtiaris or the Dwayne Browns or even DJ Humphries. But
well, hold on. You just made pod history because you answered a mailbag question in the first segment, in the first question, without even getting to them. And it's the same question we've gotten for weeks. Is like, would you sign anyone off the street? Any of the names you just listed? And your answer is an emphatic yes.
I would. I don't think the Patriots are, because I've been asking people on the team this question for weeks now, and the answer is like, yeah, still probably not. Still, it doesn't really seem like something that we want to do. And I mean, Donovan Smith, I think he's like 30, 31, something like that, played left tackle last year in the Super Bowl that the Chiefs won. He was a Super Bowl starting champion left tackle mere months ago, and now he's a guy without a job. And I can understand wanting to develop young players and trying to build from within and, all these things that the Patriots have wanted to do. But at a certain point, like, play at one position is just so bad that you need to bring in a professional. And if the Patriots aren't there yet, They're really close. Maybe that comes after this 49ers game, but like this is a conversation. This is a bigger conversation, but it goes to the Drake May conversation as well, where like you just need that offensive line to be trusted. And I don't like, maybe Vidarian Lowe can be trusted, but he also can't seem to stay healthy right now, which is a problem.
So you covered a lot there. The first thing
my apologies.
No, you're good. It allows us to sink into this. It's number one is health, right? And you mentioned that's an update. Practice, Patriots held yesterday. City So and Vidarian Lowe were out there. So has not practiced since before the preseason finale. So you're talking more than a month ago when he hurt his ankle against Washington, August 25th. And he's back out there. They'll have 3 more practices this week. You're going to need to see what that looks like. Good news is, again, he was on the field, and he also is not wearing the ankle brace around the locker room that we saw immediately after the injury. Lowe, however, was limited. So that's the health portion of this. It's very possible Caden Wallace will start on Sunday, as he did Thursday, as a left tackle, based on Lowe's availability, because Gerard Mayo also said Monday, I wish I could give you a timeline, and I can't. So to me, that seems to cast a lot of doubt about Vidarian Lowe left tackle. My first choice for this draft was just pass protection in general, because you're right, left tackle is a big, huge issue. I would sign a veteran, not even just to compete now, but to better protect the franchise. And I'm just going to go over these numbers again. The Patriots are giving up pressure on 48.5% of their passing plays. I want you to guess, Doug Kyed, what the number one defense in the league when it came to generating pressure, what their pressure rate was. It was the Detroit Lions. I'll tell you right now, it's according to Pro Football Reference, the best pressure team in the league. And you'll see different numbers, different places. But guess what their pressure rate was?
Is it like 40%?
No, not even close. 28.2.
Oh my God.
So the best pressure defense in the league had a pressure rate last year less than half of what the Patriots are allowing to their opponents.
Yeah.
Who all, by the way, don't have great pass rushes. The Niners do. The Bengals had Trey Hendrickson. That was it. The Seahawks had Leonard Williams and Boye Mafu. You were both like, okay, solid, good, not great. Quinnen Williams, really good for the Jets. Nobody else there should scare you. And yet, they are more than doubling the best pressure rate any defense in the league had last year. So this is not just, as you said, a left tackle situation. It's a left guard situation. Michael Jordan, I gave him 2 sacks against the Jets. Not good. Layden Robinson also gave up a sack. A lot of team stuff. And when I look at the team credited quarterback hits, which they're allowing 10 of those per game, by the way, there are a lot of issues with stunts and passing off games, and there's some scheme stuff in the bootlegs that you know, as I do. Jacoby Brissett just turns around and gets popped. How do you address that, whether it's at left tackle or just overall as a line? Because there's some fundamental stuff in there aside from the personnel that I think they need to address too, right?
Yeah, and I think that some of it goes to an experience where like Layden Robinson is a good blocker, but he's a young player who doesn't necessarily understand what opposing defenses are throwing at them. Like there's a reason why it seems like whenever there's like a free rusher or a free man, it's usually going through one of Layden Robinson's gaps, and he seems to not know when to pick that stuff up or how to adjust in those situations. So some of it just comes down to like these guys have to learn faster, especially a rookie like Layden Robinson. And yeah, you mentioned Michael Jordan gave up 2 sacks. He was also someone who was very limited in practice this week on Monday. So like City So, the Patriots might not have a choice other than to start City So, because it seems like Michael Jordan at this point is also banged up to the point where he might not be able to play. So I even think though that like City So, yeah, it was a different offense last year, but he's someone who's more accustomed to playing with someone like David Andrews. So maybe that helps. Maybe purely just that communication helps. But no, these guys just have to learn faster. They have to pick up what the defense is throwing at them. And I think that goes down to coaching as well to really drive those points home this week.
Okay, so I need to step back. We're talking about a bad offensive line, penalties, pressures. Last week, talking about this group made me lose my mind in television in a way that I'm still paying for a week later. Now it is making me lose my mind because I can't do simple math. 28.2 multiplied by 2 is well over 48.5, which is the Patriots' pressure rate. So let me estimate and say roughly the Patriots are making their opponents look almost twice as good when it comes to generating pressure than the best pressure defense in the league. Last year, it is not more than twice as much as what the Lions had at 28.2%. So, flagging the play, taking my penalty. There it is. You mentioned coaching. Play calling to me is another aspect where they could alleviate a lot of pressure in this offensive line. We know Alex Van Pelt's offense in a vacuum is a downfield, play action, attack. Just they led the league again in intended air yards. How many yards the football covered when it flew out of the hands of the Browns' 5 quarterbacks last year, more yards than any other team in the league. He orchestrated and ran that offense. The Patriots, I think, wanted to do that despite their offensive line issues in weeks 1 and 2. To your point about Brissett and how much of pressure is on him versus the offensive line, he was bottom 5 in the league in that metric you cited. Average snap to throw rate. How long do you hold the ball in the pocket? In week 3, you could see Van Pelt use, I think, some more quick game concepts. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just that Brissett's average snap to throw time, which is, a function of what he decides to do with the ball when the receivers are springing open and the play calling that I'm diving into now. He was top 10 in that this past week. So he's getting the ball out quicker. And who gets to benefit from that? Mr. Quick Game himself, Demario Pop Douglas. Team high 9 targets. Most of them were over the middle, safe, easy throws. More of those concepts, I think, will put less pressure on the tackles who just can't take it right now. They can't do it. I can't take it. I can't take it watching them. They can't do it when they're on the field blocking. What else besides get those quick, easy access throws to players like Pop Douglas can they do from a play calling standpoint? Because I think this is the easiest, most accessible fix that they have, right? Coaching, development, that takes time. This is something Alex Van Pelt can change as soon as Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, another one that I would say, and it is kind of related to what you were just talking about, is just getting the ball in your best player's hands. And I think, based on what we saw this summer, Jalen Polk is one of the Patriots' best offensive players. And through 3 weeks, he has been targeted 6 times. He is averaging 2 targets per game through the first 3 weeks of the season. And I don't want to necessarily compare Jalen Polk, obviously, to like Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr., because those were all like top 10 picks at wide receiver. But they're rookie wide receivers who are, in recent weeks, thriving in their respective offenses. Rome Odunze was hit downfield by Caleb Williams a few times. Malik Neighbors is like a superstar right now for the Giants, despite some bad quarterback play. Marvin Harrison Jr. had a major breakout in week 2. And maybe Jalen Polk can't be that, but I do think that he can be better than what he's been so far. And we even saw it in the preseason. He can make some plays with the ball in his hands, even if it's on a bubble screen or some sort of screen or short pass. Like, he's not necessarily just a contested catch guy, but I also think that if you're going to be competing against some of these top tier defenses, and like the 49ers this week is a good example, at some point you do have to start making a few more chances downfield. Like, you have to take more chances with your offense. It's great that Jacoby Brissett isn't turning the ball over and the Patriots overall are not really turning the ball over. But after a while, you start to see that that's not necessarily a winning formula if your offense isn't talented enough and your defense isn't making enough stops. So Jalen Polk is a really good contested catch guy. Throw it up to him. See what happens. If you get an interception, it sucks, but you're probably going to lose anyway. And like, those big plays are what you need out of your offense to actually win some of these games.
And to that point, the formula of screw it up less works most in September. Teams get their stuff together the further the season goes along. If all you're doing is just standing by the wayside and letting them implode, it's not going to work in November and December, even sometimes against bad teams. You need to get better. The Patriots are aware of this. Gerard Mayo, I think said it 4 or 5 different ways on Monday when we last spoke with him. In addition to those Polk targets, which I think is a good point, you can take those from Tyquan Thornton and give them to Jalen Polk, and no one is going to complain. Right. And it's not because Thornton isn't always getting open, but the Patriots also have not hit on a deep pass all year. Jacoby Brissett is 0-5, and he wasn't particularly good downfield anyway. But I feel more comfortable at the catch point in tight coverage. Jalen Polk, who beat Sauce Gardner on a slant for one of their few catches against man coverage against the Jets, making that catch more than I do Tyquan Thornton. One last note here. Talk about play calling, talk about quick passing game, offensive tackle woes, and move on to the next fix here in a second. The screen game, I think, has to be better. Yeah. And it's not just, they've called some of them, this is an execution point. who's getting the ball. I think you could involve Demario Douglas in the backfield a little bit more, like we saw in that little pitch that went for 9 yards against the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
You could fake some of those pitches or screen back the other way. Even the tight end screens. I mean, Hunter Henry went for 35 yards against the Seahawks. That stuff has to work. That stuff where there's not a lot of work or effort on the offensive tackles. It's just going to take some creativity. The Chiefs are the best screen team in the league, not because they've had the best offensive line every year, but Andy Reid is excellent at drawing these up and keeping you off balance. So that's something to tuck in the back of your mind. All right, we shared the first pick. I'm going to take the second one. Okay, number 2 in the draft. I'm going to take a boring one, and hopefully we can hit on this and move it away. Quarterback containment. We heard time and again from Bill Belichick and all the coaches that he hired and molded and left behind. You can't rush past the quarterback. It's the worst place to be. The Patriots are doing this a lot, or they're not even setting an edge that gets up to his level. And to that point, the last 2 weeks, Aaron Rodgers and Geno Smith are a perfect 11 of 11 when throwing out, were 11 of 11 when throwing outside the pocket. That's a passer rating of 117.4. They also had 3 first downs on 4 total scrambles. They're aware of this. Guys in the locker room told me yesterday, this is the number one thing that DeMarcus Covington and Mayo have been stressing in defensive meetings. There are other issues, and we'll get to those. But to me, this is one where it shows up most in high leverage situations, and you just can't go past the quarterback. Keep him in the pocket.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking to see from a Patriots defense how often they're getting past the quarterback. And if we do want to move past this one quickly, for my pick, I would take that the Patriots pass rush overall has to improve as well. And this is one of those issues where it's almost kind of similar to their issues in the passing game, where it's like Jacoby Brissett needs to not only throw downfield more, but also get rid of the ball quicker. It's like, all right, well, maybe your passing offense is just broken at that point if both those are issues. And I almost feel the same way about pass rush, where it's like you have to get after the passer better, but you also have to keep containment on the quarterback, which doesn't run quite as counter as the passing issues, but it is kind of a similar situation where it's like you just need to you have to rush less in some situations. You have to get, you can't get that far upfield on these quarterbacks, but you do still need to provide pressure on these guys in general, because right now, Keion White is really the only Patriots pass rusher who's getting consistent pressure. Josh Uche is doing a decent job as well, but he's not finishing as well as Keion White is. But Anthony Jennings, when he's one of your starting defenders, like he's a great run defender, but he's just not going to be that consistent or that effective as a pass rusher. Dietrich Wise has not been getting a lot of pressure, which is a little bit concerning for a player who's kind of getting up there in age like Dietrich Wise is. You start to wonder, like, all right, is this just Dietrich Wise now at this point? Is he not as effective?
Well, he's not even playing that much. So He should be fresher for these pass rushing snaps than guys like Anthony Jennings, who are also run first players, but playing more than him. And you just don't see that. No, yeah.
I believe Dietrich Wise only has 6 total pressures on the season, which, some of that is due to the fact that he's only played 61 snaps, but he needs to get that pressure rate up. He had a really good preseason as well, I thought, and he was decent in training camp. So hopefully this all clicks for him. But I think it also really hurts that they're not getting the interior pressure that they would have been getting if Christian Barmore was on the field. But at that point, I would probably start experimenting a little bit more with some of these other interior defenders on the team. If Daniel Ekuale is not getting the job done, or if he's playing too much on early downs, excuse me, maybe you do start to give, Tristan Hill some more opportunities, or Eric Johnson a few more opportunities. They're not suddenly going to find an elite interior pass rusher, but they can mix some bodies around and hopefully start to get a little bit more interior pressure. But just overall, they have to get more pressure on the quarterback.
So to the solution I would offer to the containment part is just fundamentally don't go past the quarterback.
Right.
That's a little boring side. There are a couple other solutions you could have here, and you don't need this every single week. And it probably not even for Geno Smith and Aaron Rodgers, but I do wonder if, they might incorporate a little bit more of a spy in there. And this isn't, let's try to just go buy something to fix something for free at home that I don't want to put in the effort and the work, the fundamentals and techniques here in this instance. because you don't need to spend that money. Just take the time and effort and fix it at home. But going to a schematic change, whether it's that or maybe sending more defensive backs off the edge, which we've seen a lot from Marcus Jones in that week 2 game against Seattle. Kyle Duggar came off the edge for a sack also against the Seahawks. I think they've got more margin for error because they've got the speed to then catch those quarterbacks from behind. So those are very niche solutions. I would prefer, again, just kind of stay on the outside. To your point about pressure, this brings me to another issue here in solution, which the solution is to disguise better. Their blitz package has failed them the last 2 weeks. And I have stats here, but like when you think about that and rewatching the games and obviously studying them the first time, like what are you seeing when they blitz? Because the numbers I have are not good.
I mean, I don't fully understand why they're not more effective blitzing. I think that some of it is just that, they aren't covering quite as well. Like they're letting the middle part of the field a little bit more open than usual. But no, I mean, I'm curious to know what you think on it.
Okay. So the blitz is, secondary to just edge rushers need to keep contained outside the pocket, setting the edge, and that can be done. It's just more coaching, fundamentals, and techniques. The blitz rate is average. This is not a case of the Patriots getting blitz happy and blitz crazy, and these young defensive coaches saying we're going to solve everything with aggression, which happens in other places. The issue is timing and predictability. The Patriots do turn to aggression in high leverage situations. This is spin the dial defense. Sometimes it's a blitz, sometimes it's a sim pressure, whatever it is. But when they get to those spots, even if you're only blitzing, which they are 20 to 25% of the time, and you're getting killed in high leverage spots, third down, red zone, on the fringe of field goal range, and in 2-minute drills, that matters more than if you were blitzing 40% of the time and it was all first and second down. And here are the numbers. Aaron Rodgers was 7 of 9 for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns versus the blitz last week. The Jets had a 77% success rate when they brought extra rushers. That's insane. You have offenses that have half of that. And by my math, half is actually a reasonable number because we're talking in the high 30s. The week before, Geno Smith, 10 of 12 for 171, a touchdown, a sack, and a scramble. The Seahawks averaged 13.2 yards per play against the blitz, and their success rate was a not so nice 69%. But the issue is Smith and Rodgers, two older quarterbacks, smart quarterbacks, mobile enough quarterbacks, could identify it pre-snap, make the proper check or call, and their offensive coordinators were well prepared too. Ryan Grubb had excellent calls there on the DK Metcalf touchdown and the last 2 first downs Seattle got in overtime to move the ball downfield and beat it. I think older coaching staffs have a leg up right now on the Patriots defensive staff, which is doing a fine job. Yeah. But I would change the timing of the blitz. Don't wait always if you want to bring pressure to third downs, red zone, on the fringe of field goal range. It's week 4. Teams know already you're going to do this, and that's partly the reason why you've lost. So my solution is just to not spin the dial on what play you're going to pick. Spin the dial on your watch. Yeah. Like change the timing of what's going on here so that teams are caught off balance of when you're bringing that pressure.
I also think it's going to hurt moving forward just not having Juwan Bentley out there because he is an effective blitzing linebacker and you're just taking off another good player. And I think that the other thing too is just kind of going back to my point is like the Patriots pass rushers just simply aren't really talented enough right now. And I know that that's not something that you can really fix, but like that's one of the reasons why they're not getting home is that these guys, other than Keon White and maybe Josh Uche, just aren't really good enough. And I did want to throw out a stat because I was looking it up while we were talking here. There's 11 interior pass rushers who have at least 90 pass rush snaps. And Daniel Okwale is last with 2 overall pressures. He has 2 pressures on 101 pass rushing snaps. He's got the lowest pass rush productivity among those interior rushers in the NFL. And it's just, I think he's being a little bit overworked, like I said, on early downs, but it's not working. And that's one area that they pretty much massively need to fix is starting to get some of that pressure up the middle, because then you don't have to worry about containment as much as long as they're rushing smart. So yeah, it can be a talent issue, but there's also other ways to work around that as well.
So I'm glad you brought that up because I think Ekwale being overworked is a guy who never played more than, I think it was 45% of a defensive snaps in any given season is now being asked to play all 3 downs. Godchow as well. And that shows up when he's rushing on third down. You're like, what is he? Like, yeah, of course he's tired. He's also on the field. Why is he on the field? He's a nose tackle. They need to find a way to rotate those guys on early downs if Ekwale is still going to be a big part of your third down package, because they signed guys to do this. Eric Johnson is a player on this team who stunk against the Jets, who was the waiver claim, run stuffing defensive tackle, hasn't stuffed anything. Okay. And so they need to be better there to give Ekwale snaps. I do think, too, schematically, you talk about fixes. If Keon White now, I think, is rightfully drawing some gravity, some extra attention, right? Mm-hmm. They did this with Judon all the time. Use those double teams or that slide or that chip against the offense, right? Like, put Keon White in Matt Judon's place on one side of the line of scrimmage, knowing he'll draw two blockers, and then overload the other side. Or run stunts and twists in games where you know he's going to get extra attention because he's Matt Judon or he's now Keon White, and send guys looping around that otherwise can't generate rush on their own. Those are things I think that they can go to, whereas teams probably weren't game planning for Keon White weeks 1, 2, and 3, being like, oh, we have to stop him. He had 5 quarterback hits last year. Okay? Now he has more than that. He has 4 sacks. So I think they can start to do that this week with San Francisco as far as quick fixes you can implement right away. What else is on your list, if anything? And then we got some mailbag.
I think that they need to figure out what they're doing in the secondary overall, just especially at cornerback. Like, Marcus Jones, I think, hasn't had necessarily like the worst start to this season. I think he's been overall pretty solid. But moving forward and in the past, there's just going to be issues with Marcus Jones' height, where he's 5'8". The Jet slot receiver last week was Alan Lazard. He's 6'5", 230 pounds. It's just like those things don't match up. And that's how you see Alan Lazard have a pretty big game like he had. I'm not sure if Marco Wilson's the answer, because he's already been benched as that 4th cornerback. Alex Austin didn't have the greatest game against the Jets. So this might not be a great immediate fix, but one thing that the Patriots could start to do a little bit more is maybe don't always match up Christian Gonzalez with the opposing team's best wide receiver. Maybe start to do what Bill Belichick really liked to do and putting Christian Gonzalez on the team's number 2, and then giving your other cornerbacks more help against the number 1, whether that would be, Jonathan Jones, Matt. Like, this is something where in week 1, let's say, if T. Higgins was on the field, I think it probably would have made more sense to put Christian Gonzalez on T. Higgins, who's the Bengals' number 2 receiver, and then have another cornerback, whether it's Jonathan Jones or Marcus Jones, on Jamar Chase with more help. Because, one, the heights just match up a little bit better. T. Higgins 6'4", Christian Gonzalez 6'1", Jamar Chase is about 6 feet. I think you can't allow that to happen, where like height and size is going to be such a massive advantage. I do wonder what happens, and this isn't immediate, but I do wonder what happens when Marte Mapu comes back. Marte Mapu, not necessarily someone that you want to match up against like a wide receiver who runs like a 4.4 or something like that. But Marte Mapu played a ton of slot at Sacramento State. He was really good in that role at Sacramento State. And if it is a smaller tight end or like a bigger wide receiver, I do think that he could probably run with those guys better, maybe size-wise, certainly at least better than Marcus Jones. And if it is a bigger slot receiver who runs like a 4.5, 4.6, I'd see what that looks like with Marte Mapu covering him one-on-one, because Marte Mapu is a guy who doesn't really necessarily otherwise have a role on this team. They already have 2 better strong safeties in Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers. You don't want Marte Mapu playing back deep. You'd rather have Jalen Hawkins in that role. So I do wonder if they mix him into that slot a little bit more in certain matchups.
Marte Mapu for me is like a November project or thought, honestly. I mean, given the time that he's missed, right? Like, we're talking about the second week of camp. We haven't seen him since, but he is a young developmental player that you plug in. And I think it's worth thinking about, though. Jalen Hawkins, now their 3rd safety, has one of the better coverage grades, whatever that's worth, at PFF, but in my opinion has done a good job in coverage. I think the other point that this is indirectly speaking to is, okay, if you don't feel comfortable with Marcus Jones, Mr. 5'8", in the slot, well, then pivot and play more 3 safety, because we know their base personnel grouping is either 3-corner safety, 3-corner nickel, or 3 safety nickel, and they're able to toggle between the 2 because Marcus Jones, as Miles Bryant did, everyone's favorite fellow 5'10" and under nickel corner, played both nickel and safety. So they'll look and say, okay, you want to change personnel? We'll just move our little guy around, and he'll play safety or nickel, and we'll match up that way. I do think they have an issue, though, where even if you want to put him at safety or have a different corner, you don't have a third outside corner. Like you said, Marco Wilson has been benched. Alex Austin got punked by Alan Lazard. It's early, and they'll develop, and they'll have time. But there is something here that's an issue. And I think they tried to protect themselves against this by playing a lot of zone against Cincinnati, and they got closer to man-to-man rates, around 40% against the Seahawks and Jets. All of which is to say, I don't think they know how they want to play except what we've seen consistently, which you hit on with Christian Gonzalez falling number one receivers, and then a lot of cover two with and around that scheme. Mm-hmm. And the Jets tore that up. Rodgers was 13 to 16 against man coverage.
Yeah.
The Patriots are playing a ton of cover two, and they're giving up a lot of stuff over the middle. So how do you change that? Your solution of Christian Gonzalez take the number two guy, and we'll double the number one, I think is an excellent point. Something I brought up before the Jets game last week, saying they should do this with Garrett Wilson because Lazard is that big. And he's a problem for Jonathan Jones and Marcus Jones, and he was a problem for Jonathan Jones and Marcus Jones. But not for you, because he was at the top of what your DraftKings captain fantasy. Help me here.
Was it Showdown captain, something like that? Yeah, no, I threw that out there, and that was a good choice to have him in your lineup. In that, I love the single game fantasy. It's fun.
Yes, yeah, not knocking anybody, trying to pump you up here, especially you're on like the DraftKings pregame show that day with Emerson in New York. Anyway, that is a shift I think they could make because the things they've committed themselves to, generally good ideas, generally worked against the Bengals and the Seahawks. I think the Jets made some key adjustments. They also bulked up and beat them up in base personnel, which again goes to the defensive tackles get tired because they're playing a lot more than any other defensive tackles do across the league. Devon Gottschall and Daniel Akewale are most defensive tackles. And over time, it's just not sustainable. So it's time to adjust. And they've got to adjust. I had one last one, and this is I don't have a ton of solutions here, but you need more explosive plays on offense. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So I mentioned Jacoby Brissett has not completed a deep pass all season. He's 0 of 5 on passes that travel 20 yards or more in the air. He'll hit one eventually. I don't know if he's going to hit one first on play action or not because their play action numbers are bad. Your friend of mine, Bill Barnwell, brought this up a couple of weeks ago. Run for more play action. That's cool. It's a good idea in theory. They just don't trust themselves to protect. So what I looked at was more of the intermediate throws, where Brissett's completion percentage is actually above 50. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how to access more of those. You get a lot more backside digs, maybe some comebacks, stuff over the middle. And it's just harder to nail down because it's a multi-layered issue with the passing game, right? Protection, receiver separating, Brissett getting the ball out. But that window, that area of the field is something that can exploit against defenses playing too high coverage, middle of the field open, and something that Brissett's good at. So what's the solution? Like, how is it a combination of screens or just getting the ball to your best players like you're talking about with Pop Douglas and Jalen Polk? Because I think maybe that's the focus then. Like, forget the scheme part. Players over plays might be the starting point, and then you get these explosive gains. Because every offense in the league, I don't care how you play, needs explosive plays to win. It's the second strongest correlated stat to winning after turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's getting the ball in your better players' hands a lot. Like, do you think they're using enough, let's say, like pre-snap motion in the offense right now as well? Are they doing enough to confuse and disguise defenses?
So, no is the answer.
Right.
Then stepping back, number one, Cleveland the last few years was pretty low relative to the rest of the league in pre-snap motion, especially motion at the snap. But the Patriots
it's not really something you can count on them to do in general.
Right. They were also either dead last or 31st in motion at the snap after their season opener. So this is not a big pillar of the offense. I would also say what we do a fair amount here in media and people on the outside, not within the building, is mistake activity for productivity, right? The offense is in motion a ton and do all these different things, and we look at and identify and say more is better. Not always the case, because you could have a lot of pre-snap penalties and issues and timings and formation, yada, yada. But as I've said before, the less talent you have, the more coaching matters. More motion like that is supposed to generate advantages for the talent to be able to seize on in a way that they couldn't on their own, playing one-on-one. So I do think that's a good point of, maybe more of that cheap motion, which defenses are used to, but get Pop Douglas in motion, and then at the snap, he's turning upfield in more of a wheel route. So I think that's a good point. It's just not as easily accessible as I think people would say, oh, shift more, motion more. I'm calling for that too, I just think it's a little more difficult in application, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I just think also just in general, like it was worth trying for them in the game against the Jets to go so pass heavy off the top, because I think that they were just assuming that the Jets believed that they would go run heavy. But like, I do wonder how the results of that game would have been different if they did try to run a lot more to begin the game, because I mean, I don't know if they win that game. The Jets were so much better than the Patriots. I think the Patriots still lose, but I think it's at least closer, and it doesn't look quite as embarrassing the way that it did for the Patriots if they did come out a little bit more run heavy. And you don't want to be predictable, obviously, but I also think that that's clearly the strength of the Patriots game right now. Like, you don't have those same concerns about run blocking as you do with pass blocking. So like, even if you might be a little bit predictable to start, even if it doesn't work right away, it's at least worth trying to see if you can be effective running the ball early in the game. And usually I'm definitely a proponent of the passing game, but like, passing game is just so broken right now. I think that you need to have the running game early on just to see if it'll be effective for you.
Yeah, and you're playing the 49ers, who Kyle Shanahan's on the record, or at least his older players, his former players have said this. He's committing to running the ball 30 times a game, not because it's always efficient and on its own leads to scoring, but what it does is it sets up the play action.
Yes.
This is difficult for me to say out loud, because like, there's not a whole lot of analytics community that would back this up. But his point is, you do the same thing and it looks a certain way often enough that you're banking on this having an amplified effect when you do run play action or attack downfield, either by box count or linebackers biting, that there is some sort of adjustment on the defense's part, that at least I need to respect this in a way that even though I know you're going to use play action at a high rate, one of these times I'm going to get burned. He's counting on that to lead to explosive plays. Correlation is not always there. Analytics folks would say you don't need to establish the run to throw well off play action, and you don't. But in this case, if you're the Patriots and your play action game is not working as it is right now, probably do the thing that you're better at, even on its own, and maybe could be in connection to your play action passing game.
I think that there's also an assumption in the analytics community, like in that like your team can throw the ball, which right now the Patriots just cannot do. like 100%. Like, you don't necessarily need to establish the run to set up play action in normal situations. But when the Patriots have fewer than 400 passing yards in 3 weeks, like, the rules don't necessarily apply in every situation. And I would argue that this is one of those situations where the normal rules don't apply.
So I said this morning on radio, but it still was just jarring to see last night when I pulled up the set. Brock Purdy has more passing yards this year than the Patriots have total yards.
I'm not shocked. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if you told me that like Brock Purdy had more passing yards in one game than the Patriots have had all season. Like, I mean, that's not.
But like total yards, all of the good Ramondre Stevenson game plus Jacoby Brissett passing yards, that number is not up to what Brock Purdy has gotten just throwing the ball.
No, that's absolutely wild. But it's also not entirely shocking when the Patriots have thrown for so few yards, and obviously passing yards is like such a major part of most teams. It's the majority of most teams' offenses. So like, yes, that is that. And once again, in a normal circumstance, that would be extremely shocking. With the way that the Patriots offense is currently performing, it's maybe not as surprising or shocking.
Yeah. One more for you, because I love this, and it didn't trick them up in this two stats and a lie segment we've been doing. Gerard Mayo has not beaten the 49ers either as a player or as a coach since 2008.
I mean, that one's maybe not as like, just because the Patriots play the 49ers so infrequently. But that is interesting.
So
it would have been 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, 2024. Mayo wasn't on the team in 16, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, but it's still it's not an insignificant sample size, I guess I would say.
Yeah. Well, that one got me burned because Fred and Hardy guessed that one, and that was their first correct guess of the year. But anyway, I still beat Wallach on that, so it wasn't a total loss. Plus, they got me imaging, which I very boldly called for like a week ago, my second spot with them anyway. But they delivered. Okay. We are going to get to mailbag. You've already answered one of the mailbag questions.
My bad.
Further take care of something else here. Okay, mailbag. We have, let's see. This was right here. Then it disappeared. Now it's back. Dave, is asking, quote,
Dave.
is it possible to really evaluate all of the new coaches because of the state of the roster? Like, how would anyone know if the new offensive line coach is doing a good job based on what he's been given?
I think that's fair to some extent. I also think that there's like, I think that there were some things done in the spring or even in the summer that like maybe they should have made decisions on a little bit earlier. Like when tackle was clearly an issue and it took them so long to go from right guard to right tackle for Mike Owenu. I think that that's a coaching decision that probably should have been made a little bit sooner when you're cutting Calvin Anderson, when Chukwuma Okorafor is benched after 12 snaps and then leaves the team, when Caden Wallace clearly wasn't up to starting right away. I just think that that's probably a move that should have been made earlier, especially when you've got some decent depth at guard. As far as like full on-field product, I think it's fair, but I also think that, there's bad players around the NFL and they're not all performing as bad as the Patriots are right now. So at a certain point, you do have to put some of it on coaching.
Yeah, I think this is, I don't know, probably the area where in the media we blow more hot air on any other topic than so-and-so got out-coached. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
We generally don't know what they're doing. If you really wanted to get into, the different snatch technique for playing offensive line or molly blocks or how cover 2 trap works, like these are little things that I picked up along the way going to clinics, studying different books. That's cool. But generally, when you have so-and-so got out-coached, okay, tell me how.
Right.
And I try to do that, and I know you do too, when we say those things, because we have numbers and stats and plays and things that work like this. But generally, when most people say that, it's a great question, Dave. What I would say is, though, it's really early in the season. So just like all the players, like get a bigger sample, judge them off of that. There's a lot of noise here and not a lot of signal to really look into. But also try to isolate as best you can the coaching from all the other factors going around. Meaning, what does it look like when they have a choice and that choice is going to directly impact the result? For example, like you said, Mike Owenu playing at right tackle means that you have to play Calvin Anderson, or playing him at right guard means Calvin Anderson or someone else is at right tackle. It just doesn't seem like a great decision. And then you give up pressure and you go, well, that guy at right tackle is there because the coach said so. Bad decision, in my opinion. The other part I would say is development. How good are the young players coming along? That's why Scott Peters is here. Layden Robinson is a starter. I think he earned that spot. But if Caden Wallace doesn't develop, and granted, he's been jerked around, something, again, you can isolate who's making the decisions. It's that coach. How are these decisions working? Not great. Independent of other things going around them. That's another way to look at it. I think it's easier with guys who call plays. I think it's easier with guys who have established veterans who have a baseline performance. And if they outperform that baseline, then the coaching is doing a good job. If they underperform, that's when things are a little bit screwed up.
Right.
Moving on. Lawrence, quote, should the Patriots start using a fullback? He would be better than relying on the atmosphere to slow down free rushers, right? I'll hang up and listen.
Well, didn't Alex Van Pelt say, maybe I'm making this up, I thought someone at some point said that the Patriots would like to find a fullback. Maybe it was Ethan Embry, not Ethan Embry. Maybe it was
Taylor Embry, the running backs coach.
Taylor Embry, yeah. Maybe it was Taylor Embry who said it. I forgot. I thought there was some quote about the Patriots wanting to find a fullback at some point. They've showed no interest whatsoever. I don't think anyone's even really come in for a workout at this point. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not the biggest fullback guy, and the running game's been fine without a fullback. So I know there's big fullback proponents in New England. I just don't know if it's the make or break for the Patriots.
I hope these people go to the grocery store with like the Mike Allstott rolled up in the neck roll. Like if you're a fullback person, I want you to show it in the wild and stick your chest out and lower your shoulders, clearing the way everywhere that you go. But no, seriously, it's funny, Lawrence, you asked this question because they've actually started to use a fullback by putting Hunter Henry in the backfield. A tight end, obviously not fit to play fullback full time, but they've incorporated some more two-back running concepts and plays and then use play action off of it. I started charting against Seattle, and they only did that 3 times, and then 1 or 2 more times against the Jets. It wasn't significant enough to make my film review, but they are kind of toying with this. I just don't think they have the personnel, and if you said, and you would know better than I on the workouts, they're not bringing anybody in, then they really aren't planning on doing this.
Yeah, they've also used Nick Leverett at fullback at times. So, I mean, I think that there are like guys who can be used in that. Like Jaheim Bell played some fullback at Florida State. I think they haven't done that yet. And I think that he's a little bit more of an undersized player, but like fullback doesn't necessarily need to be a guy's only job on the team. I think that you could use a tight end or an offensive lineman or some sort of defender or something if you really need a fullback on a play.
Yeah.
We saw July Tavai do it. Was that this offseason or last offseason?
Yeah, and he got smoked. Keon White.
Yeah, and he got smoked. And like Tavai now at this point is their top linebacker, so that's not going to happen. But like there could be some linebacker on the roster who they decide to give those snaps to.
Yeah. Two more. Cleaver Sports, Cleaver with a K. Is the high blitz rate against Jacoby Brissett more indicative of an offensive line that can't protect against it or a quarterback that can't handle pre and post snap?
I think it's probably mostly offensive line related. Teams see these issues the Patriots have had with free blitzers, and they're like, hey, maybe we should try that too, because we could get a free shot on Jacoby Brissett in like a second and a half or maybe even less than that. So I think that that's the biggest thing right now. But no, I do think that there are certainly quarterbacks out there who are better against the blitz, but like that
Geno Smith and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and Jacoby Brissett is a bottom quarter starting NFL quarterback. Like everyone knew that coming in. So like the criticism that you see out there about Jacoby Brissett, like, yeah, maybe he's not the greatest quarterback under pressure. Yeah, maybe he's not the greatest quarterback against the blitz. We knew that. That's why he signed for $8 million. That's why they drafted a quarterback. So those are issues that the Patriots are just really going to have to get through until Drake May is their starting quarterback.
Yeah, I would say this. The blitz rate was only high last week.
Right.
Seahawks and Bengals combined for 6 total blitzes in weeks 1 and 2. And I think that caught the Patriots off guard because the Jets generally don't blitz. It wasn't as high when I charted as you saw from places like Next Gen Stats and certainly not PFF, who can't figure out what a blitz is. But it was abnormally high, and there were issues. Because in this offense, the protections are set by the center, I'm not going to put a lot of blame on Jacoby Brissett. There were communication issues, something David Andrews, that center, addressed and admitted post-game. So I do put it more on the offensive line. Now, sacks generally are a quarterback stat. Generally, also, you can pass the ball, which we just established is not normally happening here in New England. So There is a lot going on. Jacoby could be better. Defending Jacoby Brissett and lauding his sack avoidance really riled up a very strange corner of Patriots Twitter last week, including shout out the guy who called me a mangina. But I can't get around to putting more blame on Jacoby Brissett for the one game and they saw a high blitz rate and he took more sacks, but you had a lot of unblocked pressure, which I asked Rob Mayo about. And he's like, oh, it's really only the inside that matter. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Screaming safeties off the edge are pretty problematic as well. Last one, Roman Anthony, quote, enjoyer, who I think used to be, probably still is, a Jaron Duran enjoyer, unless we have multiple enjoyers of Red Sox players who just don't really care about the possible reading into what that means when you say you're enjoying someone. Their question is, will Kendrick Bourne be back by week 5?
That seems pretty early, but maybe. I mean, like we haven't. I don't know. That seems like it'd be pretty quick. I think that you'd probably want to get him on the practice field before you actually put him in a game for longer than a week. But I don't know. I think they could certainly use him. I'm very curious to see because Gerard Mayo is saying that he's close. In Gerard Mayo, I haven't like mastered Gerard Mayo speak, so I'm not sure what close means for a player. Like that could mean that he's going to be back on the field on week 8, could mean week 5, could mean week 12. Who the hell knows at this point? But I am curious to see what the offense looks like when Kendrick Bourne is back on the field because I think he's the best or second best wide receiver on this team when fully healthy. We don't know if he's fully healthy, but he was on pace for like a 800,000 yard season, whatever it was last year before he got hurt. The number one thing I wonder about is like how they, like where they put receivers in certain positions, like who's the X, who's the Z, who's the slot when Kendrick Bourne comes out.
No one covers this part of the offense like you.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know who's the X in that situation between Jalen Polk, Kendrick Bourne, and Demario Douglas. I think that you have to force either Bourne or Polk into that role, just because I'd rather those guys be on the field than KJ Osborne or Tyquan Thornton. But I'm curious to see what it all would look like when he comes back.
Yeah, and for the folks who are uninitiated, if you're the X, you're generally on the weak side of the formation. You're generally
Right.
alone, and it's your job to win one-on-one. So the best receivers typically, not always, are X receivers. So if you're
Yeah.
thinking who separates best of that group, who could play the X, like Pop Douglas separates best, but he's a little small.
Yeah.
Kendrick Bourne, better run after the catch than he is separating coming off the ACL. To answer the original question, and thank you for submitting that, first of all. Like, we can poke fun and joke about stuff. Roman, Anthony, and Joyer, Jaron Duran, whatever. Thank you for submitting the question. Thank you to everyone who always puts in for these mailbag questions. I wouldn't bet on a week 5 return because it's not only that, Kendrick, who came on this podcast and said he would be ready for training camp, didn't then practice once in training camp and hasn't been able to by league rules these last 3-4 weeks, has to jump back in. He might be fully physically healthy, but we know football shape's a different deal. He needs to get back into football shape. The question for me is then, if they do play him, where does he go? Which is a good point by you. Do they give him more snaps than they might otherwise because you want to sell him off at the trade deadline? That's a player we know the Niners were interested in bringing back. There were other teams I know around the league that at least made a couple of calls around free agency about what that might look like. And obviously he came back to New England. He signed a team-friendly deal, but that's a piece that's not a long-term core piece for them. And if he's productive, then his stock is high and they might sell off, but that's only if he plays and how much he plays. So a good question. Thank you again to everyone who submitted. You got to go. I am going to wrap up quickly with some leftover Patch Jets notes. If anyone jumps ship, I understand, but you're going to miss out on some travel stories. Doug will be back later. Listen to the Patch Chats podcast. Read us both at thebostonherald.com. Anything else we miss?
I don't think so. I think that's about it.
Cool. All right. Appreciate you, buddy.
Absolutely. Talk to you later.
Okay. This is for the sickos. I said just there with Doug, we've got Patch Jets film notes. It's been almost a week. You don't have to hang out for this, but I'm very glad you are. Always appreciate everyone listening. And I know I made this call in the last few weeks. Episodes, rate and review. It helps us. We can see the numbers and how they go up when your contributions and feedback go up. So everyone who has rated and left reviews, positive or negative, of course, we want the 5 stars. We'll take whatever you got. Thank you very much. And if you haven't, you can do us a major help by leaving a review and a rating on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. It helps us go. Now, we have Patch Jets film notes, some travel tales, because those have, I don't want to say taken off, but I think of all the feedback we've gotten, that has been at the top of the list of more of that, more of that. So I have more of a solo trip this time. Typically on road trips, go out with Doug or guys from Mass Live, sometimes the Globe. You don't know who you're going to run into when you get out for these road games. A little bit of that next week, or not next week. Next episode, we will come back with a new 4-minute drill. Kyle Duggar is going to be on the show. We will have a new guest and preview Pat's 49ers, and we'll get to a couple leftover mailbag questions I asked pretty late, I would say, this morning on Tuesday for those questions. We got the first 5 or 6 that came in. Everyone else will answer you in the next episode. So without further ado, Pats lose 24-3 to the Jets. You know how it happened. And the players told you right afterward. Jabril Peppers, we got our ass kicked. Jacoby Brissett, got our ass beat. Yeah, you did. Outmuscled, outcoached. I've talked a lot about Jacoby Brissett and his sack avoidance and things that are unseen or don't happen can matter as much as things that actually do happen. Well, there were a lot more things that happened when it came to Jacoby Brissett and getting sacked 5 times. Okay. He got pressured 13 times. And the number that I would take is not just the 5 or the 13, which again, I said in the open, 48.5% of the time the Patriots are allowing pressure. This was over 50 for the first time in this game. But the key number is 6 pressures. So almost half of the pressure Jacoby Brissett saw was unblocked. 6 unblocked pressures. This is an issue. I talked earlier with Doug about this offense puts the protections on the center. David Andrews can make the call. If you don't execute it, you're not aware if you're playing tackle of the guy flying by you from safety or nickel or wherever he's coming from. That's an issue. They need to get that fixed more than most. We're going to go offense, defense here, by the way, for the folks who are new. No game balls because they lost. We'll have we need to talk instead. And then what would NFL film say in travel stories? So moving on with the offense. You don't want to hear any more about Jacoby Brissett and sack avoidance. I don't want to talk about Jacoby Brissett and sack avoidance anymore. Bring up Drake May. 4 of 8, 22 yards, couple of sacks, 12 rushing yards, and 1 apology for me, which is to say there's nothing really here to take away about his long-term prospects as an NFL quarterback. And I think most of you know that, but for the folks who are disappointed at me saying that, let's review. He played fewer than 5 minutes of game time. He directed one drive. The Patriots used one personnel grouping in that entire drive, and he played against a smattering of Jets backups. And to me, he looked like a rookie. He played like a rookie. I was not surprised that they put him out here. I would not have done the same, given you had a fourth string left tackle, and a third string left guard when he started that drive. But amid all of the 4 of 8 for 22 and whatever it was, 22 yards, 2 sacks, he did thread a nice 15-yard completion to Mario Douglas on 4th down over the middle. Underneath that and before that, he went 0 for 2 against the blitz with a couple of scrambles. He got, again, sacked twice, took another massive hit, and had an incompletion affected by more pressure. So his athleticism is an obvious plus, but it is not synonymous with sack avoidance or pocket presence. Okay, the two are not one and the same. Some of the worst quarterbacks when it comes to pocket presence and reacting and navigating, reacting to and navigating pressure are the most athletic quarterbacks. These are different skill sets. So for May, obviously, he's got room to grow there, even though he can outrun Jacoby Brissett by a country mile. It's that he's 22. Pocket presence, sack avoidance comes with reps. And in the meantime, the Patriots really have to decide whether it's worth it because as tough and as smart and as gifted as he is, he's a mystery until we get to see more of him. And I'm on the record, I don't want to see him for weeks because I think the Patriots can do better, must do better, should do better than giving up 10 quarterback hits per game. You had one drive. You got sacked twice. You got hit 2 more times. Not good enough. Speaking of not good enough, Patriots success rate, we talk about this has got to be a run-first, on-schedule offense. Again, success rate is how often are you staying on the chains or ahead of them. 29%. The Jets, 55%. Those numbers, frighteningly similar to the defensive pressure rate. The Patriots defense got pressure 20% of the time. The Jets defense, over 54. So, not great. Speaking of not great, Alex Van Pelt told reporters Friday he regretted his game plan. We talked about going pass-heavy script early. 7 of their first 9 plays, almost twice as many passes as runs in the first half overall. And this is against the Jets defense. We talked about it. 4.7 yards allowed per carry, bottom 10 by DVOA, bottom 10 by PFF. Van Pelt also called passes on 7 of his first 11 first down plays, which, as we know, Patriots are not great at pass protection. And even though Jacoby Brissett completed his first one and went to Hunter Henry in the flat for 0 yards, and he got hit because all of their bootleg play action game is going nowhere. So either they were gaining 0 yards, sometimes 1, or going backwards, which then, of course, sets you behind the chains, hence the 29% success rate. On play action, I didn't have the numbers when Doug and I were chatting, but when Brissett started, there's something missing here because he was 2 of 3 for 1 yard and 2 sacks. He got hit 3 times on the first 5 times that Alex Van Pelt called play action. You remember from Seattle, their issue with play action was not like, oh, we don't know how to block it, though that wasn't great. It was every time they called it, the Seahawks were ready for it, either with a big blitz, which they ran at midfield, or after sudden change, it's 1st and 10, Alex Van Pelt wants to go long because offensive coordinators love to go long after sudden change. And they had 2 safeties deep and they were ready for it. I still have not found anything in the granular level that would say, oh, the Patriots are tipping this, like a pitcher might, his curveball, when he, holds his glove closer to his face and whatever, and the hitter gets a hold of it because he's found some sort of tell. But this is an issue because the explosive plays in this offense are designed to come from the big play action throws. And I'll say it again. Brissett started 2 of 3 for a 1 yard and 2 sacks on play action. Once the Jets took a multi-possession lead, their pass rush teed off, wasn't good. Brissett got sacked in 1/3 of his dropbacks versus the blitz. We'll just skip through some more of this and get to the defense. Drake May didn't complete a pass against the blitz to that point. The Jets blitzed a lot more than the Bengals and Seahawks did. In fact, they blitzed more than the Bengals and Seahawks did combined. Multiplied by 2, that number was 6 for the Bengals and Seahawks. Jets blitzed 13 times. Again, it was a lot of safety blitz, nickel blitz off of the edge, and either Caden Wallace or Michael Wenu, or the pass protection rules that the Patriots had, just gave that up. It's not good enough. When the Jets did run 4, though, I said this earlier, it was a lot of 2-man stunts off that left side, where Caden Wallace and Michael Jordan haven't had a lot of chemistry, time to develop that. Same with Layden Robinson. We gave up a sack. Unblocked pressure at that. When the Patriots want to run the ball, we know where it's going. It's going right. Not because there's anything really more than a 50-50 split in terms of where they're going left, right, or up the middle, which would then be, of course, 33, 33, 33. It's that in key situations, you go behind your best lineman. Michael Wenu is still that. 5.2 yards per carry, Patriots averaged off the right side. But carrying the ball and getting yards is just half the battle. The first half is hold on to the freaking ball. Reminder, Stevenson, will come up later, forced just 2 missed tackles, and he fumbled for a third time this season. A third time in 3 games. And Gerard Mayo and Alex Van Pelt saying, oh, you got a mark on you now. No, he had a mark on him after week 1. Defenses don't care that are preparing for you. If your last fumble was recovered by you or the other team, they care about we can get it on the ground, and then we can get ours. The Jets did. Demario Douglas, though, bright spot. Let's end on a high note. 7 catches, 69 yards, team highs. He drew another flag, by the way. The defensive penalty. Those are yards that count. They got to keep feeding him, and especially against man coverage. He beat man coverage in his longest catch and went for 22 yards. It was in the third quarter. Just a deep cross. That was one of 4 catches Patriots had against man-to-man. Hunter Henry, Jalen Polk, Kayshon Boutte had the others. Boutte was on the last drive. Polk beat Sauce Gardner on a slant. And Hunter Henry had a deep in over the middle on one of their first third downs. Those are the guys, excluding Boutte, all due respect, that you have to revolve around in the passing game. Your best tight end, your best receiver, and then your second-round rookie who's going to take more receiving snaps if you give them to him. On to the defense. So, I said this earlier. What we know about the Patriots defense through 3 weeks is they want to play in the back end 2 different ways. And yeah, their game plan defense will change week to week, yada, yada. Those 2 ways are assign Christian Gonzalez to your opposing number 1 receiver. And Garrett Wilson had 5 catches. He had a touchdown, only 30-something yards. So I'd say largely a draw because Christian Gonzalez was a bang-bang play. It was a big play. Good job on the touchdown. First touchdown that Gonzalez has ever given up, by the way, in the NFL. And when they're doing that, Patriots play a lot of cover 2. They entered week 3 playing more cover 2 than any other defense in the league. The issue, of course, was the pressure. I talked about this with Doug, so I'm just going to repeat the stats. Aaron Rodgers, 7 of 9 for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns versus the blitz. That was after Geno Smith was even better than that. The Patriots played man coverage, though, and this wasn't always with the blitz. Sometimes you rush 4. You have cover 1 robber or rat or whatever it might be, and you played mostly man within that scheme. He was 13 of 16 for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns versus man-to-man. Did not care. He threw at Christian Gonzalez, rarely, but he did, and really picked on the Patriots with Alan Lazard and tight end Tyler Conklin, who had 5 catches, and then some checkdowns to Breece Hall. So they didn't disguise well enough. When they wanted to play man-to-man, they couldn't do it. And that's what this defense is really about. So they need to disguise better to generate better pressure. And when you're playing man-to-man against a defense that really only has 1 receiver that scares you, that's, again, why I would have doubled him and put Christian Gonzalez on Lazard for the size issue in the fact that I don't think Rodgers would have liked either of his matchups in that case. But when Gonzalez was on Wilson, he certainly did because he went to Alan Lazard with the first touchdown and had a very, very good game. Keon White, not a great game. Still had 3 pressures, 2 quarterback hits in a hurry. Anthony Jennings had a hurry and a drawn holding penalty. Also had a couple of run stuffs. But you don't really care about that. You care about the missed tackles because that's also why they lost this game. Jelani Tavai had 3. Raekwon McMillan had 2. Patriots dearly missed Juwan Bentley in this sense. Not just because he's a run-stuffing linebacker against an offense that rushed for 133 yards against you, but he's also one of your sure tacklers. So Next Gen Stats estimated the Jets got an extra 100 yards off of missed tackles. This is stuff the Patriots are normally excellent at year after year after year, even 2020 when their defense was no good. One of the surest tackling teams in the league. I think they'll bounce back. This is an outlier, but you got to work at it. The other part we already talked about again, contain. Johnny Fye got greedy on the first one. Anthony Jennings, Josh Uche, Keon White all took turns cutting Rodgers loose. And we'll end on a high note again. Jonathan Jones, forced fumble, broke up a would-be touchdown. Yeah, he gave up 8 inches to Alan Lazard and a bunch of pounds. This dude scraps and fights in a way that deserves a little bit more attention. Patriots have a very good number 2 corner who can also play in the slot and a little bit of safety. And maybe he should play a little bit more in those spots as we get deeper into the season. But for now, Great job by Jonathan Jones. Okay, no game balls. We said we just have to sit down and talk. We need to talk. And I'm looking at you, Ramondre Stevenson. He did not want to talk specifically to me after the game, not in a way that was aggressive. You guys heard him on the podcast. I think it was last month. Yeah, we did it in training camp. He and I have a good rapport. But he comes to the podium after the game, asking about those fumbles. What do you have to do better? What's the kind of technique? What's the talking point about this? I got to hold it. Okay, but specifically, like, do you need to be higher and tighter? Is it a matter of switching arms? Is it just awareness? Do you get 2 arms on it? Like, you fumbled 3 times. What's going on? I got to hold it better. Okay, we'll do it. Because if you are going to be the driver and the engine of this offense, you cannot be giving possession away. And the Patriots got lucky that the first 2 times he fumbled, they recovered. Didn't happen against the Jets. No surprise, that was their worst loss of the season. There was a lot of other stuff that goes on. But if your best player is playing some of his worst football in tiny little spurts that could swing a game, and you dodge those bullets, that's cool. You go 1-1, even upset the Bengals on the road. But when he's doing that, and everyone else is also letting the team down, you get your ass kicked. And that's what happened here. 1 fumble, 2 missed tackles forced, and that was it for Stevenson. You got to be better. He knows it. Doesn't want to talk about it a whole lot. Says he didn't even learn anything from this loss. It was, quote, just another loss. That's fine. Guys don't have to talk to the media any more than they don't want to. They do have to address us. It's in the league rules. I didn't write them. But once you're up there, you can say whatever you want. That's what he said. We need to talk. We just did. What would NFL film say? Okay, this is probably the quickest installment of the year. Knock on wood. If this fictitious documentary about the Patriots 2024 season goes through, and it would be heavy on the Bengals upset. It would be heavy on the Seahawks and the 10-year reunion and the nostalgia and the 2014 Super Bowl team coming back. And there's Malcolm Butler as the absorber, ringer, bringer, whatever, the light. They go 30 seconds or less on this week 3 game. It's Rodgers' touchdown pass. It's a missed tackle there. It's a Stevenson's fumble. It's Gerard Mayo on the sideline. Cut to him making a comment after the press conference, and boom, we're on to week 4. Whatever is in San Francisco is going to be more interesting than this clip. They're not going to belabor it. This is a Patriots documentary, a series, whatever, and you don't spend a lot of time on losses to the Jets, who, by the way, won back-to-back games against the Patriots for the first time since 2009. Miley Cyrus was in our hearts, first of all, also in the top 5 of the Billboard Top 100, and that was a moment in time, 2009. So that's it for the Jets. Let's talk about travel tales. We'll get out of here. So I talked about this in Cincinnati. People liked hearing about where we went, what we did, how late we stayed up. And it was really just 4 dudes hanging out, hitting Waffle House and having to leave and some other stuff that was going on. This was me driving down on Wednesday from where I live outside the city to Central Connecticut, where my in-laws live. Drove down with my wife. Then Thursday, drove down, stayed at Marriott 20 minutes north of MetLife Stadium because the plan was I'm going to go to the game. And then Friday, we will go into the city, see her cousin she's very close with, her new boyfriend that this cousin just found a new place with and moved in with. And we'll have ourselves a weekend and we'll get out of there. So get to the hotel. The Marriott is unlike any Marriott I've stayed in before, in that you've got like the standard tower, then an adjacent building that they like absorbed, I guess, because that's where we stayed, no more than 3 stories. And unlike the tower, it just looks like a regular old hotel. This is a different type of hotel in that we walk all the way through to the back building. And it's one of those where once you step outside your door, you can see every other door basically in the hotel, because it's just everything's facing inside the center of the building. And it's just row after row, or excuse me, floor after floor after floor, and everyone's on the same balcony. So we get in there, I take a nap, pack up, dress, change, go to the game. Game sucks. Game stinks. We all watched it. We were all talking about Shohei Ohtani, who had 10 RBIs and 6 hits and 3 home runs and 2 stolen bases, pretty much right up till kickoff. I wish we had continued. Patriots loses, Gerard Mayo, I would say, because we have to mention it, spilled more OJ in saying, I don't know, to a question about Jacoby Brissett being the starting quarterback. He since cleaned that up, saying we need to support Jacoby Brissett a lot better. Better answer. The one you should have had all along. But moving on. So we talked to Brissett. I asked him about those comments about Mayo. How do you feel? No one's trying to trick you or trap you here. What's going on? Didn't love that as well. People aren't in a good mood after losing to the Jets 24-3. I get it. Write up the comments, finish on my column, back to the hotel. I go to the ground floor of this hotel where, again, if you're at the center, you can look up and look around, see every single door that's all inside. And I just start writing and charting and watching film. And I got through the first half. And then it's 5 a.m. And I see pilots who are not leaving to go fly somewhere, but coming back from Newark or LaGuardia or JFK or wherever and just kind of give me a head nod from 3 stories up, because there's a certain bond between men who are working at 4:45, 5 a.m. in the morning. Say, okay, this is enough. I got through half the game. It's a big head start. That's what I want to have. Crash till 9:30 or so. Work more in the hotel. We leave at like 1:32. A lot of traffic getting into the city. And look, I've driven around or through New York over 100 times. Doesn't make me an expert, except about those places that I've driven and how to get around traffic if you need to, whatever time, wherever you're going. I haven't really done New York, though, in 10 years. I'm not a New York City person. I love Boston. Boston fits me. And it's great living here. So this was new, really, for the first time since college, one New Year's that I had there, which we'll skip over details of that story. But we were going to the East Village. So hopping on the FDR, which was just a lovely 45-minute wait in the car. Like you were sitting at the dentist's office going just 2 miles an hour. Anyway, we get there. Cousin lives in the East Village. Go up to the apartment. She's there, greets us. I finished my film review. While that happens, my wife and her leave to go to the bar where her boyfriend works at, called Maiden Lane. This place was awesome. I finished at 6:30. I'll meet up with them later. I walk in, said it right to him. I said, look, this feels like a place that you've been to, I don't know, all your life, and you just don't know it when you walk in. You got worn tables, people laughing. It's close, it's cozy, it's dark. Board games in one corner, TV behind the bar. You can see how the chefs are making food. Over in the corner was a tin fish kind of menu, which I'd never heard before. And certainly not going to eat because I'm not a big seafood guy. But start to catch up. We get within this small place, this corner bar, again, in the East Village, Lower Side. It's an open concept. Cousin's boyfriend's a great dude. You know, we pick out, I don't know, someone picked out one of the games that was in the corner, and it was this piece of green plastic that had rows going down, and it simulated basically a straight horse track, because that's what it was, little tiny plastic horses, and each of these 8 lanes, and the length of this, you know, kind of plastic board or racetrack or whatever was like 2 shoe boxes or so. And so a couple people who we had just met, friends of, you know, her boyfriend who works there, put single dollar bills on the table. So we're betting the horses and we're picking them out and finding a name, and some dude who works there comes from behind the kitchen, seeing us starting to play this, and jumps in and goes, Alejandro horse, Alejandro horse. The man wanted to pick his own horse. He worked there. He could. That was fine. My horse was William Hung. So we put down the $1 bills. My wife's cousin cleans up, I think, won $20 somehow in a game with 8 different horse tracks, because you hit the button and all of like the little plastic horses you're chugging along very slowly to the end of this. So we hang out there a little bit more, walk 45 minutes to the West Village, meet my uncle-in-law on that same side. Great guy. Hadn't seen him since Christmas. We eat at a place called the Ear Inn. This was another cozy, and maybe just because I'm not like in the city, but we got like smaller bars and places in Boston too. Cozy place, amazing burgers, good drinks. Her boyfriend had been friends with the bartender, so we get a little bit of a discount. Certainly not complaining there. And in a strange twist, for what otherwise in the West Village felt like a factory for finance bros who were sitting all around us, and people in their late 20s. Look, I've been there, had that time of my life, not, you know, trying to make the good folks at JP or EY or, you know, Goldman or whatever all happy or proud of me, but not my crowd. Not the crowd we saw in Cincinnati when we were walking around. I was like, these bars, you really should be 27 or trashed, or ideally both if we're going to hang around here. So the 4 guys in their 30s who cover football for a living went elsewhere. No, we sat down. We had an amazing dinner. We stayed there for probably 3 hours, more drinks. And the weird twist was, again, for this kind of atmosphere, a lot of young people in their mid to late 20s, was they put sheets of paper over the tables, which, again, tiny restaurant, and put out crayons. So you are free to be 5 years old for the entirety of the time that you're there in drawing. And that lasted till 12:30, 12:45 at night. Go back to their place, wake up early in the morning because there's a game. Actually, a match, I should say. We went to 11th Street Bar back in East Village. Another amazing place. I maybe this is just my kind of vibe. Like worn wooden tables, people who know you there. Again, her cousin's boyfriend knows basically 60, 70% of the people in that bar. Everyone's clothed in red because this is the Liverpool bar of New York. They're up 3-0 by halftime. Couple of beers for breakfast, go down the hatch. Apparently, Steve Kerr went there for Jurgen Klopp, their old manager's last match as manager. Stayed to himself, hung out in the corner, had a lovely time. We go back to Maiden Lane. Again, highly recommend if you're ever in the East Village. They've got, again, delicious like steak sandwiches. They've got amazing seafood. I, being an infant when it comes to food, order a pizza bagel, which was delicious, by the way, and some garlic bread and some other stuff. And as we're sitting on the outdoor patio space, which is really on the sidewalk outside of the restaurant, I kid you not, one of every 20, 25 people stops and says hello to my wife's cousin and her new boyfriend. It was idyllic. It was a beautiful New York day. So if you like hanging out with friendly people, and this sounds like I'm doing an ad as if it's fucking Prize Picks or Game Time, just go to Maiden Lane or 11th Street Bar or to the Ear Inn. This was a better New York experience I could have ever honestly dreamed of. And not because I think any kind of way of New York, but you just don't know new people you're going in. I was tired, of course, being up at 5, hanging with those pilots. So it was maybe just more my speed. But check it out. Maiden Lane, 11th Street Bar, the Ear Inn if you're up for a burger, or some finance bros out in the West Village. We drove back up later that Saturday, back to my in-laws. My sister had a baby shower actually on Sunday, back closer to my hometown in Connecticut, which is closer to UConn. Ran some games, emceed the day, lots of old family and friends, and finally came home and passed out. So that was it. Not as exciting travel tales maybe Cincinnati, but just want to give a well-due shout out to those folks and people, and just a very friendly, happy, just good energy kind of place. So I'm off to San Francisco this weekend. Doug and I are actually leaving Friday. So we'll be there Friday night. Going to go to a Giants game Saturday, though. Bob Sosi, if you remember our schedule episode, said he would go to a game that Saturday. Bob Sosi has since bailed on me. And Bob Sosi is going to hear about it. And then we will go out and I will have more traditional night on the town tales for you after next weekend. Before that, though, a Pats 49ers preview episode. Kyle Duggar will be on the show. We'll get to some mailbag questions. Again, please rate and review and subscribe. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. You can find me on YouTube now as well. Appreciate the time. Thank you for listening. We'll be back soon.